With Empire coming to a close, Marvel is hyping that this starts a brand new era. Everything has changed. So, what are all these things? Well, let me go through kind of the status quo changes that we see really from the epilogue issues of Empire, and you can judge for yourself how much has changed and how does it impact you. Hey everybody, this is Perch. Empire was, I mean, it was going to be a troubled comic in the sense that it didn't have a ton of interest coming in. It was using two writers, which Marvel seems obsessed about continuing to do, but the results are often, it's hard to say that they're great. Yes, AVX made a lot of money and that had a ton of writers on it, but it was also the Avengers versus the X-Men, and there was a lot of built up kind of interest in that event. And I think that the wrong lessons were learned from it. But be that as it may, I don't want to go off on that topic. A topic for another time. Empire was billed as being kind of status quo changing. The problem is Marvel really says that around all of their events. Every event that comes out is going to change things forever. So fans can be forgiven if they're a little bit skeptical about those results. The other problem that happened, of course, is that the pandemic hit right as Empire was getting rolling. And this slowed down a lot of things, and it caused them to compress the schedule. They wound up canceling several of the tie-in issues, which I think, in all things considered, was probably a good move. I think that helped the event rather than have it so bloated. But now, in we can look at it and say, what's really changed? Well, the final issue of Empire, Empire number 6, and it goes, it's the warning is out there. Of course, this is going to contain spoilers. So if you haven't finished Empire or the Empire Aftermath events that just came out, you'll want to read those first before you listen to this. But at any rate, in Empire number 6, the Avengers, the Fantastic Four, Earth's heroes defeat the Coati, and they imprison Koi, who was betrayed at the last moment by the swordsman Spirit, who is within the Coati, and all wrapped up. As well, kind of as a side plot that you had to be reading Fantastic Four in order to really grip, the Kree and the Skrull children that the Fantastic Four rescued in Empire number 0 were kind of trapped, and their battle, their anger was broadcast out, threatening the Kree-Skrull alliance and tipping them back into war. At the last minute, kind of they turned the dial the other direction, so to speak, and their bond then went out, and it strengthened the Kree-Skrull relationship. And so that there's a new kind of union and alliance between the two, underneath Emperor Hulkling, or Teddy, who was revealed to be married to Billy, to Wiccan. So the two are married some time ago, and there was some shenanigans around a different person. Teddy's grandmother was impersonating him. Anyway, they get that all resolved. He's the official emperor, and things end. The comic ends with Tony and Reed Richards talking about this being a bold new space age, but you didn't really get a feeling like things had really changed, other than a battle had taken place and they won. So the how does it all wrap up, or what in the two epilogue issues we get? Avengers Empire and Fantastic Four Empire as epilogue titles. And in addition, you have Captain Marvel thrown in there as well. And she was temporarily turned into the Kree's accuser. And so those three titles really tell us kind of what is changed. And so what are those things? Well, first of all, as you can expect, Captain Marvel hands the accuser hammer and the role over to her half-sister, Lori L., who is the new accuser and has the muscular physique to match. So Captain Marvel is no longer the accuser. The official accuser is Captain Marvel's half-sister, Lori L., the accuser. That just rolls right off the tongue. And in addition, you have a couple, you have this reveal, and this is one of those kind of subplots that you never are really sure whether they'll get to or not. But the weapons that the Coati were using, which really wasn't highlighted during Empire as these being anything special. The Coati had these weapons, but he didn't really think much about it. They were plant people attacking things. But these weapons are revealed to be kind of older than the elders in the universe, some of the oldest weapons in the galaxy. And we get a very brief kind of tie-in with the Nick Fury, the original Nick Fury, who's now the Unseen, kind of the new Watcher, a cosmic being. And he discovers that the weapons are from the first race. So the first race being a long lost, that predates the Celestials and the Asgardians and the Elders of the Universe, everything else. These are some old race who somehow secretly armed the Quadi. Why did they do this? Nobody knows. The other big moment is that we have the two children, the Kree and the Skrull children, who had been raised to battle, and now they've been under the care of the Fantastic Four. Um, Teddy officially declares that these two children will be adopted or, under the care of Ben and Alicia. Ben and Alicia have been wanting a family, so they've been kind of teasing this. So now they have two kids to raise, and it's these two kids. So they now have they've been married, and so now the two they have a family, and the family is a Kree and a Skrull kid. So the Fantastic Four family is now two families in one family. Then there's two more little small elements in this entire issue. One is the return of Uatu the Watcher as the Unseen, the original Nick Fury, is basically kind of contemplating the universe and what's going on and this mystery of these weapons. His eye, the eye that is, one of those eyes is Uatu's that he's put in his head, kind of explodes and the ghost comes out and Uatu the Watcher kind of emerges from it and speaks and says, "There shall be a reckoning." So there's that. So this is all events that came about from the original Sin. This issue from quite a while ago. Jason Aaron did this where the Uatu was murdered, and Nick Fury became the new Unseen. So it looks like they're back on touching on that again. The other piece, we do get a nice tribute to the original Captain Marvel in there, sort of. We get one panel where they're toasting him, and that's nice that they remember. But the Quadi are basically banished to a rock, to somewhere far, far in the uncharted space. So this kind of undermines a little bit of Empire #6, where there was revenge sworn, and it would. They would come back to, we will be back. And so you're thinking, oh, this guy's going to be put on the raft. No, the Quadi, what's left of them is, along with their celestial messiah, is basically banished to this green planet, far, far, far away in uncharted space. Maybe never to be seen again unless the plot calls for it. So there's those two elements as well. The other piece that happened, this was more in Empire, but it's going to be followed up with the Immortal She-Hulk one-shot, is that She-Hulk was apparently killed during the event and then was kind of resurrected in the same way that the Hulk has been resurrected. And that is that's going to be dealt with in that book. But, by all signs in these epilogue issues, she's back to normal and everything else. So then the last kind of two elements are a bit tied together. So first off, much like Empire #6, where Koi was giving a warning about how he'd be back as he was shipped off into prison, the Hulkling, Teddy's grandmother, who was impersonating him, is now put in an iron mask, very literature there, and basically imprisoned. And she gives a warning that this empire will shatter, this alliance will be destroyed, it will not hold. And, the Avengers, Alpha Flight. For some reason, Alpha Flight's getting a lot more prominence. It hasn't really been discussed in quite a long time as anything that matters. We'll get to that in a second. But they're saying the Avengers and Alpha Flight, they'll allow this empire to shatter. And that, whatever you're so proud of with your allies, they won't assemble for you. And, you'll wish you listened to me, kind of shakes hands. And then we get a little flash forward where everything is screwed up and, there's bodies everywhere and Hulkling is, bloody and dying and he gets a mysterious guest who's going to try and help him out. Very Secret Warrior style. And we'll get to what that is in a moment. But the other kind of thing that ties into this is that Abigail Brand, another character who's kind of been in the background, nobody really has cared about, especially for these cosmic stories. Now, she, in theory, was leading the Alpha Flight, and Alpha Flight was rebranded a few years ago, if you haven't been following Marvel Comics, as a space station and a kind of the space defense force, Alpha Flight. And the Alpha Flight's used basically when it's convenient to people. It popped up a little bit in Secret Empire. It was kind of in Captain Marvel for a little while, but it really hasn't for several issues. They really don't do anything with it. But you got a bunch of people and a bunch of members of the original Canadian Alpha Flight up there on the space station wandering around, and it really doesn't make a whole lot of sense because those powers aren't suited for space and everything else. But whatever. We've seen Alpha Flight pop up in Al Ewing's Immortal Hulk. We've seen it just from time to time, but as a concept, it feels like something Marvel kind of, put on the plate and then just kind of walked away from. So this is basically Abigail Brand is reaming Carol for, not calling him in. You've got this entire kind of space defense system. You've got a whole network that was built, an army that's, in theory supposed to track these space events, but instead, in one of the more honest moments, Abigail Brand's like, hey, how many people died because 7 people, i.e. the Avengers, decided the fate of the world around a campfire? This is how Empyre led off, that the Avengers basically said they'd help the Coati, and that led to a lot of the chaos that went down. So she's reading her the riot act, and then she quits. Abigail Brand says, I'm done. This is useless. If Alpha Flight is an afterthought, it can't work. It's useless. A little bit of meta commentary for the comic itself. It's on the nose. At the same time, it's like, well, there are 2 writers on this event, Dan Slott and Al Ewing. Al Ewing has his hands full with Hulk, certainly, but he's used Alpha Flight a bit. Dan Slott's doing a lot of cosmic stories with Fantastic Four. Maybe Alpha Flight should have been a priority. Why? I guess, bringing it to the table now, saying, hey, this thing that we created, nobody's been doing anything with. I mean, you're right. Okay. So, so anyway, so she takes off. And then there's, a little bit of back and forth and quips that go on. And so remember that scene I mentioned earlier where we flash forward to the future. Hulkling is all beat up, and I should have listened. My friends, my enemies, Alpha Flight, the Avengers. We're not getting. She was more right than he wanted to admit. So we don't know that he was betrayed, but something didn't happen. Something didn't work. And Abigail Brand shows up. And she's got a new little costume, sassy look, and she says, I've made something better than Alpha Flight. I've made my own team. And you see a couple people, you see one person, Gateway, it looks pretty clearly behind her, and then you can see a couple other shadowy areas. One looks to be either Ronin or Taskmaster behind her, but it's hard to say. We've got a couple little people there. And it feels very Secret Avengers based, or Secret Warriors, I should say, based, where working outside the system, Abigail Brand put together a little team to kind of defend the universe or so on. So where does this go from here? Who knows? Something that comes next. That's really the fallout of what happened. So it's promising, certainly the Fantastic Four is a larger family. Captain Marvel's sister is the accuser. Billy and Teddy, a Wiccan and Hulkling, are off kind of running an empire. Suddenly, Teddy is talking very Game of Thrones like. He's the big king, so we're going to see some Kree Skrull action there. There's a little bit of a mystery of where these weapons came from, and maybe this underlying threat of the first race. That just sounds ominous on many fronts. But that's what we have. So where does this leave us? Well, it leaves us about to head into Ten of Swords, of course, the X-Men big crossover event. And then from there, we're going to hop over to King in Black. So we're in Consto event through probably February, March. So it'll be curious to see which of these plots or any of these plots are going to get breathing room, given everything else that's going on. But there you go. There's the fallout from Empyre. This was at one point considered to be Marvel's big event for 2021, of course, 2020. What am I saying? Of course, it didn't work out that way on a number of different fronts, but no worries. We've got some new events to come in. So what do you think? Is this live up to the hype of earth-shaking, status quo changing? Are you? So the funny thing is, some of these things that have been mentioned here are interesting to me. I'm interested to see how they follow up on it. I'm curious. I think that it shuffled the deck a little bit. I'm a sucker for a new team that's operating in shadow. Sure, I'll look at that. Abigail Brand's an interesting character. It hasn't done much. The problem that I always have is when you hype it as things will never be the same. A bold new space age. It's going to be huge. It almost makes me, at least, want to deliberately resist. Like when I see stuff like that, my first inclination is to go, nope. I want to disagree, which is not fair. But that's the gut reaction I always have to overhype. So what about you? Are you hyped? Are you excited to see some of these things play out? Could you care less? Where do things sit? Leave me a comment below. Let me know your thoughts, your opinions in the comments. Otherwise, like this video if you liked it. Subscribe if you haven't subscribed yet. Introduce to a friend. We'll do our best to kind of break down the news in as honest a way possible. Most importantly, though, thanks for listening.